Very good job.
To Mr. Kram. Mr. Kram.
Mr. Chair, I've had the opportunity to talk with Mr. James Bogus, CEO of the Regina Airport Authority, and he paints a grim picture. He expects the airport to be out of money by the end of the summer. Mr. Chair, the loss of the Regina International Airport would be devastating, not only to the city of Regina, but to southern Saskatchewan. The Liberal government has made a great show out of allegedly providing $330 million in assistance to airports through lease deferrals. But here's what they're not telling people. Airport lease payments are already tied to revenue and have been for many years. So when an airport's revenue goes down to zero, that means that its lease payments to the federal government go down to zero, pandemic or no pandemic. So, Mr. Chair, that means this government has done absolutely nothing to help Canada's airports. Will the government commit today to provide real assistance to Canada's struggling airports?
The Honourable Minister.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for the question. And in fact, the Minister of Transport has been working very, very closely with airports, large and small, right across the country. We have been continuing to update our responses in this rapidly evolving situation. We've been in touch with each of the airports, and we've been working very hard to help them manage through these difficult times. We know that there are some circumstances where continued operation at those smaller airports has not been possible, but wherever possible, we have done our very best to try to accommodate the very real financial challenges that these airports are experiencing.
Mr. Kram.
Mr. Chair, Canada's airports are teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, and the Liberal government's response has been to defer their lease payments, which were already based on revenue, so these deferrals are effectively meaningless. In the meantime, the U.S. government's CARES program is providing $10 billion in grants and low-interest forgivable loans to support American airports. Mr. Chair, will this government commit today to saving Canada's airports with a similar program of grants and forgivable loans?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have worked very hard and continue to do so to make sure that we provide the supports to regional airports right across this country. We know how important air transport is to such a vast country, and the tremendous work that they do, and they do support communities and they support the Canadian economy. We're going to work very closely with them to make sure that we provide the right supports to help them get through this difficult time, and because we also know how important they will be to the eventual restart of our economy. And their continued existence and success is important to that restart, and we'll work with them.
Mr. Kram.
Mr. Chair, the airport crisis goes far beyond my home city of Regina. Airports are vital to Canada's economy, providing over 200,000 jobs nationwide, paying $13 billion in wages and $7 billion in taxes. But now Canada's airports are on the brink of collapse, while this government stands idly by as airports have lost over 90% of their revenue. Last month, Joyce Carter, chair of the Canadian Airports Council, called on this government for a three-point plan for airport recovery. That includes the permanent elimination of ground leases, substantive loan and bond guarantees, and a special plan to support smaller airports that provide vital supplies to rural and remote communities. Mr. Chair, can the Minister inform the committee if the government has done anything in response to the Canadian Airport Council's request?
Honourable Minister.
Again, I thank the member for the question, and I would make the observation that all of our small and regional airports are vital to the communities that they serve. And that's why it's important that we work with them all. And so the Minister of Transport is in regular communication, and there are ongoing discussions with airport authorities, large and small, right across this country on how we can continue to support them. And there have been a number of proposals made by the industry itself and by some of the regional airports on what form that help can take. That's all part of a very important ongoing discussion. But, Mr. Speaker, I believe it is clear. Canadians need our help, and we are there for Canadians to help Canadians get back on their feet when we get through this pandemic.
Mr. Kram, we have time for a 15-second